In this episode, we meet an act of humanity in the name of Christmas, so profound that we are still talking about it today. Up until the start of World War I in late July of 1914, battles were defined by cavalry charges, armies on horseback charging toward their enemy. But with the invention of the machine gun in the late 1800s, the way in which the war was fought had transformed before the world's eyes. The horse's role on the front lines shifted as casualties soared. By the end of 1914, an estimated 1 million lives had been lost across the armies, and 500,000 horses had sacrificed their lives on the battlefield. And in the midst of all of this, men laid down their weapons and came together in peace and in the name of Christmas. This is Creature Meets Culture. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Creature Meets Culture. Happy Wednesday. It is a happy Wednesday indeed because I get to talk to you and we get to record an episode. Everybody, this is our first episode we've recorded since being back. I was going to say being back at our homes, but I guess you were always at your home since I was at your home. And what a lovely trip it was indeed. I just love spending time with your family so much. It just is the best, warmest feeling. And we ate so many yummy cookies.
It was so nice. I was sitting there thinking, like when we were all sitting in the living room, just thinking it feels like I never moved away. It just, every time we're all together, it just feels like everything's just the same as it always has been. Plus a baby now.
Plus a baby. That part didn't feel the same. It's so true. There was like a part of it that felt like nothing had changed. But then there was a part of it that felt like everything had changed because I have a small toddler running around your house.
That's
making friends with your dogs.
Dakota was talking about how much he enjoyed her.
Oh my goodness. She loves Dakota. She loves Dakota so much.
They were great together.
Yeah, it was really, really precious. Okay, so something not so precious is our topic for today. Well, no, that's not true. We're talking about horses. Horses are precious and amazing. This story is very sad and hard. I've already prepped Savanna for it. I have some dad jokes ready to go at the end of this episode to alleviate the sadness. But just a heads up right at the front, this is a sad one. We're talking about animal suffering in wartime, which is really fun. I know. I will note that I will be very brief in my description, and I will not go into extreme detail on anything. There's a couple things that to keep the integrity of the story I have to address, but I will keep it as general and not graphic as possible. Also, it's coming out on Christmas Eve, which, sorry. But on that note, we're talking about the story of horses in World War I, and more particularly during an extraordinary moment in history referred to as the Christmas Truce of 1914. So have you heard of this before? I had not heard of this before.
I had not. I admittedly am not as into history as you and Haley are. So many of these things I have not heard of before, but I am very into animals. So at least I get half of it.
Well, the thing is, I feel like there's something cool about that because you go into it with a clean slate. It's like, yeah, it's
That's
good.
true.
Mm-hmm, it's true. And you love me, so.
I do.
Yeah.
That much is true also.
Yeah. So I think, oh my gosh, I think that's kind of it. I miss you. We're talking about horses. It's sad. And yeah, I think we're ready to get started. Some facts about horses. The domestic horse, the Latin name is, I don't know how to pronounce this, Equus ferus cabalis, and is one of two living subspecies of Equus ferus. There's another horse, which is an endangered Perzual Alski's horse. I did not look up that pronunciation. So sorry. There's also a third subspecies that is extinct called the Eurasian wild horse, and it became extinct in 1909. Did not know that.
I
Also,
didn't
didn't
know
know
there
there
were
was another
extinct horses.
subspecies. Yeah, and I looked it up
There's
and
another subspecies of horse now?
yeah, and it almost looks like, they're a lot shorter. They're a lot thicker in, like, their fur, kind of look like a crossover between a Clydesdale and a pony.
Is it like a miniature pony?
It kinda
You
looks
know what
like
I
it,
meant?
yeah. Yeah,
Hmm.
but they are endangered.
Huh. Gonna
So
have to
not
look
like a
into that.
yeah.
I love a good chunky pony.
Good old chunky ponies. Domestic horses possess 64 chromosomes, while Przewalski's horses have 66 chromosomes, which make them genetically distinct. Um, and the horses we're talking about today, they are herbivores and they have evolved as prey animals whose primary defense mechanism is flight. Under natural conditions, horses spend approximately 12 to 16 hours daily grazing. And yeah, so they're eating that grass, munching on that hay.
Same.
Same. Um, Horses are highly social animals that live in small family groups called bands. Remember the Band of Horses?
I fell asleep to them for
Really?
years. Years. There was one album that I loved and was so soothing, and I fell asleep to them, like, on repeat for years and years and years.
Was it the album with the incredibly sad song of the girl dying? The Lay Me Down in a Bed of Roses. Remember that song?
That's
That's
not
Band.
Band of Horses.
I'm
No.
pretty sure. It's not Band of Horses.
Is that, like I don't wanna sing it. When I Die Young?
Yes.
That's not Band of Horses.
Oh, no.
I don't know who that is, but it's not Band of Horses.
I
Please
feel
hold
like
my
this is the time to share that me, Debbie, um
It's the band Perry. Close.
I had one word
Close,
in it
but no
right.
cigar.
I feel like this is a good time to share that I am, one, terrible with song lyrics, but I also am terrible with, like, recall in general, which is hilarious that I'm doing a history podcast, but, like, me relying on my own memory make up things all the
Unreliable
time.
at best.
Yeah, unreliable at best.
Do you know Band of Horses? Do you know who that is?
I don't think
Or
I
were
do.
you
I thought it
always
was
thinking of
band.
the Perry? They're great.
I
You should look them up.
heard it here first, folks. Band of Horses. Um,
2 thumbs up.
so actual horses, they are the bands of horses typically consist of one dominant mare who guides daily activities, one or more stallions who provide protection, and then their offspring. The group sizes range from 2 to 25 horses, and they communicate primarily through body language using subtle signals, including like ear position. I'm kind of thinking of cats. You know what I mean? Like when like cats have like their ears forward and back, and like
Mhm.
their eyes are all big or small. Like same vibes. Tail movements. I feel like this is similar to a lot of other social animals. We today are talking specifically about horses used in war. Records state approximately 4,000 years ago. The first horses started being used in war in the ancient Near East. They first began domesticating and training before horses, armies moved on foot. Battles were slow and obviously confined to smaller areas, and horses changed the game for armies. Several things made horses uniquely suited for war. The first thing was speed. A man on foot can march like maybe up to 20 miles a day if he's pushing super hard. If I'm
That's a
thinking back,
lot.
yeah, well, okay, so like to bring in some backpacking. stuff to this. Like a rigorous pace, I would say, is about 20 miles a day. And that's if you're not dealing with like crazy elevation changes or what have you. So like I can totally see that. A man on horseback, however, can cover 40 to 50 miles in the same time. Meaning that armies could not only move faster, but they could strike unexpectedly. They could be somewhere before somebody was expecting them to, and then they could also retreat before the enemy could organize a response. Groups of horses charging in wartime specifically are called cavalries, which we'll be referring to a lot. So from here on out, I'll be using the word cavalry, but just know that that's what I'm referring to. The second thing is a height advantage. The mounted soldier, I'm pretty sure I just said a mountain soldier.
You did.
The the mountain soldier, which also sounds like a fun podcast topic, but the mounted soldier sits 6 to 7 feet above the ground and can see over like infantry formations and obviously just see more things, but also strike down at opponents, giving them tactical awareness and physical leverage. The third advantage is striking power. A horse weighs, as we know, there's like a big range here, but like 900 to up to 1,200 pounds. Like there's horses are big and chunky, and they can charge at speeds of 25 to 30 miles per hour. So let's say a mounted soldier with a lance or sword charges at a full gallop. The combined momentum of horse and rider creates an insane amount of impact compared to a human's ability without the horse. I am not a science person in general, but I was a little bit curious about this. So I did do a little bit of research into the physics of this and the amount of force that a horse and soldier have together compared to a soldier on its own are like dozens times more powerful than a man by himself, like punching or whatever. The fourth thing is endurance and versatility. Horses could carry not just riders, but also, obviously, supplies and weapons and wounded soldiers. Heavy draft horses could pull artillery and supply wagons, and light horses could serve as reconnaissance, carrying messages across battlefields when communication lines were cut. A well-trained cavalry horse could fight all day and then be ridden 30 miles to the next battle. So the versatility here is just like insane. Ancient civilizations from Mesopotamia to Mongolia built entire empires on horseback. The Assyrians used cavalry to dominate the ancient Near East. The Mongols conquered the largest contiguous land empire in history entirely on horseback. Medieval European knights had status and power entirely defined by their horse. This made me think of A Knight's Tale, that movie with Heath Ledger. Do you remember that movie?
Uh-huh.
It's so good. I did learn, fun fact, while I was researching this episode or this part of the episode, that the word chivalry comes from the French word chevalier, which is knight, and that word derives from cheval, which is horse. The term knight evolved to specifically mean mounted warriors. Um, all of these things that I just touched on, all of those could be their own episodes about horses and the roles that they played in these specific armies and empires. It's just really incredible. I went down quite a few rabbit holes that I'm not going to address here because it doesn't have to do with our episode today. Horses just not only initially changed the game for wars, but evolved with the evolution of war as well. By 1914, when World War I began, horses had been the backbone of military transport and combat for 4,000 years. I mean, almost 4,000 years. Cavalry were considered elite military units, and generals and war strategists in general believed that cavalry would win the war. Unfortunately, they were really wrong. World War I began at the beginning of August in 1914 after Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria was assassinated. Russia and Germany were at war. All of these armies began World War I with cavalry horses. Germany and Britain began the war with 100 cavalry men each. And Germany had a similar number, and Russia had mobilized over, are you ready for it? 1 million
Mm.
horses.
Where did they get all those horses?
Oh, we'll go into that. What a good question that is. In fact, I'm about to tell you right now. Britain at the start of the war
Great timing.
owned, I know, good timing indeed. What a good co-host you are. Britain owned only 25,000 horses at the start of the war, which was nowhere near enough. 115,000 were purchased under the Horse Mobilization Scheme, which included officers going across Britain from farm to farm, to estates, taking horses. Farmers could apply for exemption if their horses were essential for food production, but a lot of the exemptions were denied. So this meant families watching their farm horses being taken away into war,
That's
which
so sad.
is it's really sad. So one of the things so for this episode, most of it comes from um a book called The Christmas Truce of 1914. I forget the exact title. I'll cite it. And it's a great account of the actual event that we're going to be talking about. But for war horses in general, one of the things that I watched was a Steven Spielberg movie called War Horse that was made in 2011, and it was based off a children's book that was written in the 80s. And I read the book too because they have it online. And that is the story of a horse being taken from a farm in Britain and being brought to war. And it follows the story. Um, Sad.
It was a sad story, wasn't it?
Um, I can't give it away, but I feel like all animal movies are sad,
Except for Homeward Bound.
except for they're sad. There, that one is a wild
Fun.
adventure. I
It
love that
is.
movie. Between 1914 and 1918, the United States sent almost 1 million horses and mules to Europe, and another 182,000 animals accompanied American troops after they entered the war in 1917. Canada sent about 130 horses overseas. So, to answer your question, Britain, because we're focusing on Britain for today's episode, they got horses from farmers and people that lived there and then had a bunch of horses sent. And by the war's end, Britain alone had mobilized approximately 1 million horses.
I can't even imagine the amount of horses.
So, a little bit about a cavalry charge. This is a tactic that worked kind of like this. The soldiers would form up in lines. We've all seen this in movies, sometimes hundreds of horses across. And at the signal, they would advance at a trot, then a canter, then a full gallop, building momentum. The front line carried lances, which were long wooden poles with steel points designed to pierce armor and flesh. The impact of hundreds of horses and riders hitting an infantry line at 25 miles per hour could break, I mean, you name it, enemy formations. They could scatter troops and create chaos. And this had worked, but they did not work against machine guns. The machine gun, invented by Hiram Maxim in 1884, could, in theory, fire 400 to 600 rounds per minute. This kind of shook out practically to often firing in bursts of 10 to 50 rounds, around 250 rounds per minute. For accuracy and also to conserve ammo. A single machine gun nest could mow down an entire cavalry charge before the horses got within striking distance. Add to that long range artillery that could fire shells for miles, and barbed wire that tangled and trapped horses, and trenches that defined World War I and created permanent defensive positions. The cavalry became obsolete almost overnight. All of this
They
unplanned
tangled them in barbed
before the
wire.
war began. They did indeed, yeah. Listeners, Savannah's face is
I
very
hate
sad.
that. I hate it.
Within the, I hate it so much. I hate it, I hate it, I hate it. Um, Within the first few months of the war, it became clear that cavalry charges were suicide. The horses did not go home. Their role instead shifted from combat to logistics. And unfortunately, this is where things got worse for horses because the need for them honestly only increased. The Western Front descended into trench warfare. Are you familiar with trench warfare?
That where they literally, I'm thinking trench foot, I'm thinking of laying in, like, a wet, uh, trench. But I don't
Yep.
really know, like, the reason why that
Good question.
happened.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. So, yeah, you're right. So, opposing armies dug elaborate trench systems along the line of like where the war was happening. And this stretched from the Swiss border to the North Sea. So, you're right. They
Oh,
dug
long trenches.
long trenches. These trenches spread for approximately 450 miles. Within a month of the war starting, France, Britain, and Germany had started digging their first permanent trenches. And by the time our story really starts, they'd been fighting in the trenches for just about 3 months. And you're right, there are literal holes in the ground that stretched along like a tunnel. And the reason they did this is because of the machine gun and the artillery fire. If you're above ground, you're super vulnerable, obviously, to the machine guns. And so they would hide so they wouldn't get killed from the machine guns. Um,
So it was more of
this,
like a hidey hole rather than like a were they shooting out of the trenches at each other?
yes.
Oh, okay, okay. So
Yes.
it
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
like hiding and that's where they were doing their fighting from.
That was exactly that. Yeah. That's where they were doing their fighting from as well. The horses in this war now became the only way to reliably move supplies because early motorized vehicles did exist, but they were primitive and unreliable, and they also couldn't handle the mud that was very prevalent in the land where they were fighting this war. So horses now were being used as transportation for the guns and artillery. They pulled massive field guns weighing thousands of pounds. Heavy draft horses, the kinds that were used on farms to pull plows, were now pulling cannons through mud that could be waist deep. They also hauled ammunition wagons and food supplies, water, medical supplies. So, whereas before they depended on horses to lead them through battle, they now depended on horses to provide everything that they needed for battle. They also evacuated wounded soldiers in horse drawn ambulances. Light horses carried messengers when communications lines were cut by shelling. Officers rode horses to move between positions. So, horses are so incredibly necessary in this war. And they required they're horses. They are huge. They require a substantial daily rations of hay and grain. And unfortunately, there was no way to meet these needs a lot of the time. During some periods, between 500 and 1,000 horses were being shipped to Europe every day because they were dying so fast. Once again, listeners, Savannah's face is horrified.
I just
I'm so
it's just
sorry.
so sad. It's honestly not as sad as I thought it would be. Debbie, like unless it gets worse. Debbie, like, gave me a pep talk this morning about the sadness,
Well,
so
here's the thing. I'm reading to you a lot of numbers, which is intentional, right? It's like I feel like when things are like in numbers, it's a lot more doable or like, when we just kind of like go over it. But it's just like I can't imagine being there and seeing this happen. That's what I can't imagine of like actually like experiencing something like this would be so sad, especially because like horses are a big part of war, but like they're also a big part of culture and society at this time anyways. So a lot of these soldiers have emotional ties to horses outside of the context of war. And so I'm sure seeing horses go through this type of pain and suffering from like a soldier's perspective is really traumatizing.
Not to mention
Um,
all the other things that they were going through. On top of that, you have dead
that too.
horses everywhere.
And yeah, seriously, I know. Like, come on, we don't need that, people. Um, So by 1917, like I had said before, Britain had over 1 million horses in service. Oh, this also includes mules. So horses and mules in service. Britain spent 67.5 million pounds on purchasing, training, and delivering horses to the front, which is equivalent to approximately 9.95 billion pounds today, which in US dollars is $12.6 billion.
I was gonna ask how many US dollars, and I
Isn't
didn't
that
think that you would,
crazy?
but you would have. That is crazy.
Look at me. I did my research, baby.
Weird.
Um, yeah, that's a lot of money. British vet units operated horse hospitals where 2.5 million horses were treated during the war. And approximately 2 million of these were healed and returned to service. A typical horse hospital could treat 2,000 animals at any one time and were outfitted with state of the art medical technology. By 1917, Sanders explicitly told troops that losing a horse was worse than losing a man. New Zealand veteran Bert Stokes recalled that men were replaceable while horses were not.
I bet
And
that didn't make the soldiers feel very
It's like, well, you
gosh.
know what? That's sometimes how I feel about animals in my life.
Like, you're replaceable with the horse has gotta stay. Okay. Yeesh. I'd be like,
um,
"Right, I'm outta here."
if you don't need
But
me, I mean, there's plenty of things I could be doing if I am replaceable. Okay. Between the trenches lay no man's land. This is the wasteland that belonged to neither side. So I kind of want you to imagine, like, let's say the two opposing trenches, think of it as the outside of a river or the land on either side of a river. Okay. And that's stretching for 450 miles. In between that is this no man's land. It doesn't belong to either side. This is the land that the warfare is happening under as they're shooting across at each other.
and it's how many miles wide?
It depends. Sometimes it was as little as 50 yards apart, so not far at all. Other times it was up to 500 yards apart. But that's like the largest separation that's noted. Really not far. I mean, if you think about it, it has to be in reach of a machine gun. So it can't be too far apart. The space in between, it was cratered by different artillery shells. It was tangled with barbed wire. It was notably muddy and just like horrific and nasty. And sadly, it was absolutely littered with the dead, both human and animal. And this is because during certain charges, people would come out and charge, and that is where people and animals would die or be injured. The mud was so deep sometimes that soldiers could drown in it. Once again, Savannah's face is crazy. Okay, you have to say something when your face is crazy.
Keep thinking like, "Oh, that's horrible. I hate that so much." Like, I hate the idea of that, but then I'm like, how many times can I say, like, I it's
Hate it.
just the idea of drowning in general is horrific, but drowning in mud.
Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah, no, thanks. As you can imagine, and as we've already said, the conditions for horses on the Western Front were unspeakably brutal. Horses transported supplies and artillery mostly at night. So they were moving through this mud that could be waist deep on a man, which meant that it was chest deep on a horse. And winter conditions were specific or especially lethal, but they died from exhaustion, starvation, disease, exposure, and wounds. They died from shell fire and later in the war from poison gas. Quick trigger warning here. It's again not going to go too in deep, but um the part that really haunted the soldiers is that the horses that were wounded but not killed in no man's land couldn't be retrieved during active fighting. So they would lay between the trenches suffering sometimes for days, and they would cry out, and the men couldn't do anything because they had to be in the trenches, and, that is noted to be, like, one of the most dreadful sounds of this war was the sound of horses crying out, and they couldn't rescue them.
Haley's getting the next sad one. I don't care.
Um,
We're gonna
by
think
de
that days.
by December of 1914, when the war was 5 months old, the initial enthusiasm, if you could call it that. I feel like there's some level of romanticism about war, like before you're in it. The belief that it would be over by Christmas, all of that had died. Hundreds of thousands of soldiers had already died at this point, and the Western Front was locked in a stalemate. Heavy rain had turned trenches and no man's land into freezing mud. Soldiers were exhausted, cold, and disillusioned. Many soldiers were really young. These were like teenagers and men in their early 20s, and war was nothing like what they had been told or what they were expecting. To be fair, this war wasn't like what anybody was expecting, because of the machine gun, and the promises of glory and quick victory had proven false. They were stuck in trenches, in mud, watching friends die, and living with disease. But Christmas was coming. Proximity played a role in what was about to happen. How you asked before of like how close they were to each other. Soldiers could actually hear each other talking and singing and coughing. So in this book, The Christmas Truce, and up leading up to the actual event of the Christmas Truce, the author goes pretty in depth about how the soldiers on opposing sides in the trenches could hear the other soldiers like living their lives. Like they could smell them making breakfast. They could like smell the sausages. They could hear them singing songs. They like didn't know each other's language, but they like could hear them living, if that makes sense. Like could hear like what was going on. Um, which is devastating,
I
honestly.
bet that made it harder to kill each other. I've been listening to you sing songs and make breakfast for the past 2 weeks, and now I'm gonna shoot you.
Yeah, yes, exactly. It's like they were
Easier to
close
shoot a
enough.
stranger, so I've been told.
Much yeah, well, I mean, for the record, Savannah has shot no strangers, everybody.
Or people that I know.
Or known people, yeah. Um, they were close enough, yeah, exactly as you said, to see each other as individuals rather than, like, abstract enemies. So Saxon units, Saxon being a region in Germany, they were known for initiating friendly contact. This is earlier on in the war. British soldiers considered Saxons much more amicable than Prussian units. So Prussian units were a lot more militaristic, much more dominant. This was like a totally different vibe. Um, so up until Christmas, there had been these informal ceasefires to retrieve wounded and dead. So during these times, both sides would let each other go up and get their people, get their horses, take them back.
Like, the best of humanity right there.
Yeah, yeah, during like an awful time in humanity. Yeah, exactly. On top of that, both sides needed to repair trenches and dugouts because of like, you know, the weather and craziness of all of it. So this Christmas truce to come was in part an extension of these practical agreements that had already been happening for a while. The men that were involved in these informal ceasefires mostly were like conscripted soldiers or like drafted soldiers, not like career military men. So like these were like kids and miners and farmers, like these were normal people. So they had a lot more in common with each other than commanders that were ordering them to fight, you know? Um,
Mm.
and uh yeah, so when they were like just living their lives, making breakfast and singing songs and stuff like that, it was like they're human too. This book that I was reading said that they would also like shout out friendly greetings. Sometimes they would sing the same songs, like they like, oh, I know that song, and they would sing along to each other from their respective trenches too.
And then they just pop up and shoot each other?
I mean, I don't wanna say yes so nonchalantly. I'm sure
I
war
don't
was just
think
so
I could.
confusing. No, Savannah,
If
you
you
couldn't
didn't
go
know
to
that already, I don't think that I could.
That is not news to me, but,
I'd be
yeah,
like,
no.
"Oh, are you okay? Sorry, did that hit you?"
Whoopsies. Yeah, no, neither one of us nobody wants us in war. I promise you right now. Me and Savannah, please don't draft us. We'll do an awful job.
Not be a good day for you. Be
No,
like,
but we
"Send
will
them
snuggle
back."
your animals. Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
absolutely. Mhm.
Okay, so on December 7th, 1914, Pope Benedict the 15th issued an appeal to the leaders of Europe that, this is in quotes, that the guns may fall silent at least upon the night the angels sing. So, like, proposing a Christmas truce. His request was officially rejected by both sides. They were like,
That was the Pope?
that was the Pope, yeah.
Sweet
Um,
Pope.
yeah, you know what? I didn't look too much into this Pope. I don't know if I can back up everything he did, but
That
this is a
one
sweet,
thing. Sweet Pope.
sweet, sweet, sweet thing by a Pope. um, yeah, they were like, no, no, Pope, we're not, we're not doing that.
They probably laughed. They're like, "Ha ha
Yeah,
ha."
like that's funny. Uh, but on Christmas Eve, something extraordinary began to happen. Late in the evening, British soldiers in trenches along the Western Front heard singing from the German trenches across no man's land. They saw small Christmas trees with lit candles being placed along the German parapet, like the top of it, and messages began being shouted between the trenches. German soldiers, many of whom had worked in Britain before the war, they like knew English, and so they called out Christmas greetings in English. And at this point, soldiers from both sides cautiously emerged from their trenches. They stepped into no man's land, the desolate stretch of torn earth and barbed wire, and extended hands in greeting instead of weapons in violence. And it was one of the most profound acts of humanity ever witnessed in the midst of what can only be described as hell on earth. So they're shaking hands. They shared cigarettes, they shared chocolate bars, and in one account, it even noted that they snipped buttons from their uniforms to give as souvenirs to the others. Mhm.
They're like,
New-
"Remember this Christmas miracle with a button."
Uh,
All I've got. We're living in the trenches here.
yeah, truly. Newspapers passed between enemies who couldn't read each other's language but tried anyways. They took photos, which I will definitely include on the Instagram post, and cameras were officially forbidden, but they posed together, and there are pictures with arms around their shoulders. Um, there were also, and this is a famous part of it, they played soccer or football. Or
In the barbed wire?
yeah, so it's like not really a match. You can't really call it a match, but like informally, they like kicked around a soccer
Okay, that
ball.
makes more sense.
Yeah, the ground was gnarly. There was no way to actually play soccer, but they kicked around a ball, I guess is what you should say. Um, and on top of that, they helped bury each other's dead. So they like went together. Um, at this point, bodies had been lying in no man's land for weeks and sometimes months, some of the bodies being unreachable in the daily crossfire. So now soldiers from both sides, they worked together in digging graves in the frozen ground. British soldiers helped lower German bodies into the earth, and German soldiers stood at attention as British chaplains said prayers over their fallen enemies. They conducted services together in different languages, sharing grief and the recognition that these were someone's sons, friends, husbands, and fathers. And for one day, the dignity of the dead mattered more than the divisions of the living. And this is where our horses enter the Christmas true story, though they're often overlooked in popular accounts. So, the reality, again, of the awful, awful no man's land is that countless horses, like men, were trapped there, wounded or dying or already dead. And I put in here that at one point during the war, a soldier recorded seeing 22 dead horses within his like field of vision in no man's land. And like the soldiers, the horses couldn't be retrieved. So it is not noted in the book that I read in the Christmas Truce book. They don't explicitly say that when they were burying each other's dead that they also helped with horses, but it is very, very possible that burying and helping with suffering horses were also a part of this story. There are many notes during the informal truces that they would help each other's horses. And so during the Christmas truce, it's really focused on like the human interaction piece, but it's also believed and possible that horses were a part of it too. I'm just putting a caveat here that this was not included in the Christmas Truce book, but I wanted to include it here because I think that one, it's very possible, and two, well, I guess yeah, it's just very possible.
I think it's
Um,
possible. I think it'd be
yeah,
hard to enjoy your soccer game next to a dying horse.
I would have to agree with you. I've never had a soccer game next to a dying horse, but I can imagine it would be hard. And also, like the spirit of what this event was, I think it's not hard to imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, this idea specifically of what like we're talking about was captured in Michael Morpurgo's book War Horse, which is what I was telling you about. That's like that was the children's book. It's like a chapter book. I think it's like 80, 90 pages. It's a fast read, but that is the book that was later adapted into Steven Spielberg's 2011 film by the same name. And in this story, the horse Joey is his name. He is the horse that gets taken from a to World War One, and at one point he becomes tangled in barbed wire in this area between the trenches. And soldiers from both sides hear his cries and call an informal truce and work together to free him. One of the soldiers says, "We have shown them, haven't we? We have shown that any problem can be solved between people if they only trust each other."
Is that really what someone said?
Well, it's in the book.
Oh,
It's a fictional account. Again, it's like what we're talking about here. It's like it's very hard to imagine that these things didn't happen, even
yeah.
though we don't have accounts of all of it. It's like I have to say that like this specific scene isn't like a factual scene, but it is like based on a factual idea. Yeah. According to, oh, this is the book that I read. Malcolm Brown and Shirley Seaton wrote a definitive account called Christmas Truce, the Western Front, December 9th. This truce occurred along approximately two-thirds of the British line and in some French and Belgian sectors as well. Estimated 100,000 soldiers participated in this truce, and it occurred along some two-thirds of the 30-mile front controlled by the BEF, or the British Expeditionary Force, and it involved mainly British and German soldiers. In many places, it lasted through to Boxing Day, which is December 26th, and in some quiet sectors, the peaceful mood lingered into January 1915. Officers
They're like,
had
let's just stretch this out as long as we do.
nobody feels like fighting, okay? Which just adds such a layer of tragedy to it. It's like
They needed a break.
they did need a break. This is such a brutal and bloody war that nobody was expecting, but nobody more than these poor kids that, like, they're kids, when you're like,
They are. Yeah.
they're kids. Officers had mixed reactions to the truce and the truce. Some participated and others were horrified, fearing it would undermine some type of like fighting spirit. After December 1914, high commands on both sides issued strict orders forbidding fraternization. There were some small truces in 1915, but nothing really like 1914. And the following year, by 1916, soldiers themselves were a lot less willing to fraternize because the war had just become way too bitter. Too many friends had died, and it was just too dark, like it was too far gone, making the Christmas Truce of 1914 incredibly unique, not only in the context of history, but also in the context of this war. So to continue through, I thought I would tell. So that is our Christmas truce. As we go along the war of like World War One and horses, I wanted to talk about a particular horse because most horses did die in World War One, but a few became very famous for surviving. The most famous British war horse was named Warrior. It's a little bit on the nose, but that's all right. Warrior was born in 1908 on the Isle of Wight. He was a bay thoroughbred standing 15, about 15 hands high. I was going to ask
I think it
you,
really is hands.
it is hands. And I didn't know that until
Whose
your mom
hands?
talked to, what?
Not your hands.
Not my hands. I don't know whose hands. Whose hands are we talking about?
My
Your
hands are
hands?
pretty average, I
Those are
think.
some average looking
Debbie
hands
has
right there.
tiny hands. It's definitely not Debbie's hands. But maybe it's like a
Well,
man's. I don't know. Next time we see a horse, let's do a comparison and then ask the
horse
owner. Taller
horse
horses.
people, whose hands are we using?
Oh
I
yeah,
didn't
horse
know.
people. Help us out.
Please. Um, yeah, when we were doing our listener tales episode and your mom talked about what was her horse's name?
Applejack? No. Jack? No. Oreo?
Was
I
are
think she
not the
had one
same.
named Oreo. I don't know if I don't know.
She said he was 17 hands high and I chuckled because I am not a horse person. So
You're
I
like,
was like,
a weird way to measure something. Mama
yeah.
C.
So we just like made up our own unit of measurement for exclusively horses.
Mhm.
To be fair, horses deserve it. They're really cool. Cool.
It's like, that's a big horse. How big? I don't know. Let me check it by my hands.
And then it just never went away.
Yeah.
I should look that up. So, yeah, Warrior was 15 hands high.
Bless you. Good catch.
His owner was General Jack Seeley, who was a close friend of, can you guess? You can't
Deborah?
guess. No.
Oh.
Winston Churchill.
Oh, okay.
I don't know.
There you go.
I don't know why I thought you would guess that. Healy took Warrior to France in August of 1914, and Warrior served on the Western Front for the entire war, Savannah, for 4 years. This
That poor
horse,
horse.
the poor horse. I
Send the
know.
man home.
So Warrior's survival was extremely extraordinary. I'm saving the actual statistics for how many horses died in this war for the end, but just know it's crazy that this horse like survived this long. He was present at like so many major battles. I'm listing them here, but they're really not pertinent to our story. But he was twice buried by shell explosions and was dug out alive. He
What?
also, yeah, this horse is
That's pretty
crazy.
impressive. Got a
Not only
will to live.
truly, he's like Howie. Howie
Yeah.
would not survive this war.
Yes, he would have. Don't put that on Howie.
You're right, he would have. Warrior survived being trapped under beams from a collapsed building and also survived machine gun fire, like being shot at him. His stables were destroyed by fire not once, but two separate times, and he escaped both times. On one documented occasion, a horse standing nose to nose with Warrior was shot and killed, and Warrior barely flinched. Just like, yeah,
He's seen it all at this point.
at all. Yeah, of course. Yeah, he's seen it all. General Seeley wrote a book called My Horse Warrior in 1934 and wrote, his escapes were quite wonderful. Again and again he survived when death seemed certain and indeed befell on all of his neighbors. It was not all hazard. Sometimes it was due to his intelligence. I have seen him, even when a shell has burst within a few feet, stand still without a tremor, just turn his head and, unconcerned, look at the smoke of the burst. This horse is insane. In March of 1918, Warrior led the last major cavalry charge of the war at Moriel Wood. Sorry if
Mhm.
I mispronounced that. The
You
charge
probably
you say you
no.
probably did.
Yes.
I did. I can already tell you I did. The charge was successful. German advance was halted, and it was one of the few moments when cavalry proved effective in World War One. And it required specific circumstances: surprise, momentum, and immediate tactical advantage. Warrior returned to Britain in 1918. He lived until 1941, Savannah. Yeah,
So does that mean he was very young horse when this started? How long do horses live?
I don't know. Googs.
You Googling it?
Yeah, 25 to 30 years old horse because
And when did this
he died at the age of 33. Yeah.
so he was
That's
just a young man when all this was going.
poor guy. His obituary in the London Evening Standard was titled "The Horse the Germans Could Not Kill."
Oh my
In Sep-
gosh.
I know.
Warrior.
Warrior. Perfect name, honestly, on the nose, but if anybody deserves it, it's
It
him.
was a little silly at first,
It
but I think it's fitting.
Yeah, and that was his name, like, from the beginning. Can you imagine? It's like they manifested it. In September of 2014, 100 years after he went to war, Warrior was posthumously awarded the animal equivalent of the Victoria Cross. Warrior's story represents what millions of other horses endured, except most of them didn't survive. Are you ready for the total count of how many horses died?
Lay it on me.
Approximately 8 million horses, mules, and donkeys died during World War One.
Do you say 8 million?
Yeah, I said 8 million. I said 8 million.
That's so many. I honestly, to be honest, if you asked me how many horses were in the world, if you asked me to guess, I would not even say 8 million.
Nor would I. I don't know what I would say, to be honest, but I would have to agree
And
with
there
you.
must have been some left over to repopulate all the horses, 'cause it's not like we're lacking horses these days,
No, we're
you
not
know?
lacking horses. And you're reading my mind because that's exactly what I was going to get into next. So, of the 1 million horses that Britain mobilized during the war, 484,000 were killed or died. And of the remaining survivors, so around 500,000 survivors, only 62,000 returned to Britain.
Where'd the rest of them go?
We're going to get into that in a second. Just hold on. But between 1914 and 1918, the U.S. sent almost 1 million horses overseas, and another 182,000 horses were taken with the American troops when they entered the war in 1917. And of those horses, only 200 came back to the United States. So between Britain and America, very few horses came back. So, to get into where they did go, the remaining horses, when the war ended, the official reason horses didn't come back home was because of lack of transport. The ships were needed to bring soldiers home, and the horses couldn't be a priority. But the truth is sad. It was cheaper to sell the horses than ship them. Additionally, strict quarantine restrictions prevented horses that had been overseas from returning, particularly horses from Australia and New Zealand. So, many horses were sold to French and Belgian farmers who desperately needed them to rebuild their agriculture. France and Belgium had also lost over 1 million horses during the war, and they needed replacements like stat. So some horses were sold to commercial markets, and there was a high demand for horse meat in France and Belgium during the post-war food shortage.
Listen to
So a
me.
lot of
They forced the horses into battle and then they ate them.
they did.
That is so messed up. Talk about disrespectful. I'm more upset by that than by anything else that you have said tonight. Disrespect. Dishonor. On you. On your cow. Come on.
Your whole family.
That's crazy.
Yeah, you're not wrong. It's like literally these horses carried your weapons, they carried your stuff, they carried your people, and now you're just gonna eat them? Yeah.
You know,
I
it's
mean,
like, "Oh, these would make great food. Let's have some horse burgers."
to be fair, there was a huge food shortage going on, but still, big old thumbs down to that
Yeah.
one. So, yeah, so the fate of a lot of the horses that had endured years of war was slaughter and butchering and also rendering into glue and industrial products.
Oh, upset.
Sorry. I'm t- I did. Okay, see, you said it wasn't that bad. I tried to tell
This
you
that
it's
is
pretty
the
bad.
worst part.
Okay,
D
that is the worst part.
Is
But I'm
it?
no,
I
no,
mean,
no,
believe
it is. I'm rounding no, no, it is. I'm rounding a corner here because
like,
I couldn't end it completely on a terrible note. So I'm gonna tell you about a story of a woman named Dorothy Brooke because she felt much like you did, and this is where her story begins. And it is one of the most remarkable chapters in the history of war horses. So, in October of 1930, which is 12 years after the war ended, Dorothy Brooke arrived in Cairo, Egypt, with her husband, um, who had been appointed to command the British Cavalry Brigade in Egypt. Dorothy was a Scottish socialite. She was 47 years old and a devoted horsewoman her entire life. So we're shifting gears. We're getting into fancy Dorothy. She's a socialite. She's rich. She's cool. She's in Egypt. She's 47. Before leaving England, Dorothy had heard disturbing rumors about the fate of former British war horses in Egypt. At the end of World War I, approximately 20,000 horses from British, Australian, and American forces were in Egypt and Palestine. Due to quarantine restrictions and lack of transport, they were sold locally. So, what was happening in France and Belgium also happened in Egypt. When Dorothy arrived in Cairo, she began searching for these horses, and what she found shocked her. I took out a lot of detail here, so I'm not going to go over the detail, but the horses, now well over 20 years old, were still alive and still working, and their conditions were beyond awful. I put in parentheses, not putting them here because I read them and had nightmares. And so I was like, I'm not going to go into it. Just know the conditions were extremely terrible. To your point, these horses were fought in war, they were sold. Some of them were sold for horse meat. The ones that were not sold for horse meat were treated awfully in this situation here. Dorothy
did you
wrote in
really
her
have nightmares?
I did. Yeah, I did. I did really have nightmares.
Thank you for not telling me.
You're welcome. Dorothy wrote in her diary, out here in Egypt, there are still many hundreds of old army horses sold out of necessity at the cessation of the war. They're all over 20 years of age by now, and to say that the majority of them have fallen on hard times is to express it very mildly. So the first horse she found was a chestnut with an army brand on his hindquarter. She named him Old Bill. She described him, I shall never forget the shock he gave me. I stood staring at him. Heaven knows the other horses were bad enough, but somehow he was different. Obviously, he had been a good horse once. He had been happy and well fed as other horses had never been. He had moreover served in Palestine and had suffered hardships in that campaign as few horses have endured in modern times. Dorothy realized she couldn't save all of them by sending them back to Britain. There were too many, and they were too old and too damaged. So she made a decision. She would buy them. Give them a few days of good food, kindness, and gentle care, and then give them a merciful end. She began buying every war horse that she could find in Cairo. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry.
It's like, I know that it's for the best because, like, it probably is better that they die than, like, be in horrible conditions, but, like, it's just so sad.
It's it's so sad. Yeah, so she started buying every war horse she could find in Cairo. She raised money from her friends and from her own pocket. Remember, so she's a socialite, so she's like telling her friends. She's probably writing them like, "Girl, I want to buy this horse and give it some good food. So give me money.
Set up a GoFundMe.
She did. She set up her own GoFundMe. GoFund Dorothy. In April of 1931, she wrote to the Morning Post describing what she had found. The letter was published, and the British public responded with an outpouring of support. King George V was among her supporters. Between 1930 and 1934, Dorothy Brooke and her committee rescued 5,000 horses and mules. They were identified by their conformation and military brands, and the British Army branded horses with like a broad arrow on the left hindquarter, so they were like easily recognizable. They bought approximately 60 to 70 animals per week at their peak periods. Once purchased, horses were brought to facilities, given food and care, and on what she called Black Friday, the day after buying day, Dorothy would select which horses were too far gone, and those horses were humanely euthanized. But Dorothy realized that simply rescuing war horses wasn't enough. I feel like this often happens where like you start helping and then you're like, oh my gosh, this isn't enough. Like I need to do more. So that happened to Dorothy. Egyptian working horses, mules, and donkeys were also suffering from poverty and ignorance, honestly, not like malice or abuse necessarily, just the conditions of their situation were bleak. In 1934, she founded the Old War Horse Memorial Hospital in Cairo, which offered free veterinary care to all the city's working equines. This was the beginning of what is now the Brook, which is one of the world's leading animal welfare charities. I did a deep dive into this charity and it's incredible. I highly recommend everybody looking into it. I'll talk about it a little bit further on, but um yeah, just incredible. Dorothy Brooke died in Cairo in June 1955 and was buried there. Her legacy survives in the Brook, which now works in poor communities across Africa, Asia, and Latin America, reaching more than 1 million working horses, donkeys, and mules annually. So, to kind of sum it up here, the Christmas truce remains one of the most. What? What is that?
Look at that sweet old socialite. It's Dorothy Brooke.
Oh yes, yes, Dorothy Brooke. She's a sweet old socialite. I know. I had to share her story. It's a great story. Like,
That horse
it's
has no hair. It's a horse with no mane.
oh,
You
it's
know
so
that song?
sad. No, horse with
Riding
no
on through the
mane.
desert on a horse with no mane.
Oh, I don't know that
I think
song.
it's a horse with no name, but I always
What?
thought it was a horse with no mane. It's that horse.
Oh, Dorothy. So the Christmas truce remains one of the most famous moments of World War One. It was a brief pause when enemies became human to each other, whoa, but the horses are often forgotten in those stories. Yeah, I just felt like this was an important story to share because even in the worst circumstances, we are capable of incredible acts of compassion and um that I'm glad that we're wrapping up with a Dorothy Brooke story because I feel like she was never involved in the war, but the way that she impacted war horses and today is just incredible. The website is brookeusa.org. That's BROOKEUSA.org. If anybody who's listening would like to support them financially or just learn more about what they're doing right now, they have a ton of information of different projects that they're a part of around the world. Something that I really love that they do is that they do have their own programs, but they also are partnering with programs that are already existing in countries and are using their like established resources to help fund and buffer things that community members are doing, which is, I feel like, a sign of a great charity organization. Yeah. And so that's our episode.
Okay.
Alrighty.
What
I
about
love
the
you.
joke? Don't get out of here.
Oh, yes. Oh, that's right. Oh, yes, yes. I have dad jokes. Well, you said it wasn't as bad as you thought it was, but I do have
No,
dad
for
jokes.
the people. Come on.
What?
Gotta think of the listeners. They might need a dad joke after that.
Okay.
I also just want to hear them. I love a good dad joke.
um, okay. Okay. The first one is just a statement, okay? Because listen, I used to be addicted to soap, but I'm clean now.
But bumped.
Did you hear about the claustrophobic astronaut?
No.
Because he just needed a little space. You don't want to laugh, but you can. Don't worry about it. Just happen. What's the best time to go to the dentist?
2:30.
2:30. Okay, hold on. I need one that you don't know.
That one I've
Um,
got actually from working in dentistry. You'd be surprised some of the jokes that people come in with.
that does make sense. Um, what did the ocean say to the beach? Nothing. It just waved.
I have one for you.
Tell me.
I
What
forgot.
is it?
Forgot. Oh, why is the sand? Oh no, why is the sea so salty?
Why?
Because
Boo.
because the land never waves back.
Took you a minute.
There's not a lot going on in here right now.
I feel you though. Yeah, I'm tired. Also, like, I just feel like Christmas. Okay, to be honest, after visiting, I am so tired. That flight back just did me in. The first flight was fine. The baby did great. The second flight was so rough. I feel like she cried the entire time, and it was three and
How
a half
long was the
hours.
flight? Eee, I bet
It was.
everybody just loved you so much.
I got a lot of death glares. Also she like for some reason everything she ate just got everywhere and my shirt was so dirty and my like she was so like just full of like crumbs and like food.
Ew.
It was so nasty. It was just I was so ready to be done and she hasn't gotten back to like her sleeping schedule yet. So she's like up like for hours in the middle of the night. It's been a rough go.
Oh, that's
So
fun.
yeah. So yeah, a lot of crickets up here too. But that's the episode. Alrighty, well, I love you
Uh,
so much.
I love you too.
You're the best.
Wait, how
Bye.
are we ending our episode? Not like
Oh,
this. You have to do like a send off.
I know. I feel like the only I love you so much. I love you, baby. No, honestly, literally the send off every single time has just been I love you, bye.
That's fine.
I know. We don't have a send off yet. I don't know what it is. I love you, bye.
Okay, love you. Bye. Talk to you
Love you.
tomorrow
Bye,
morning.
baby.
Bye.